Welcome aboard, Giants fans, to episode 42 of Talk is Cheap, our New York Giants podcast on NJ.com. Our first one in a couple weeks after the Super Bowl, obviously won by the Denver Broncos over the Carolina Panthers. Jordan was out there. I'm joined by Jordan and James. I'm Joe. You know what we do here on Talk is Cheap. And Jordan, you were out there at Super Bowl 50. You're back now. Welcome back. And I guess before we get into all the Giants stuff, how was the week? And how was Santa Clara, San Francisco, wherever you were?
They're far from each other, by the way. I'll tell you that much. That's one takeaway. Jeez, not close. That stadium is far from San Francisco. No wonder why they have trouble getting people out there when they're not good. But aside from that, we got a lot of Giants stuff out there. Talked to a bunch of Giants guys. Got the injury rundown on Victor Cruz. Still not running yet. Working to get back. Obviously, still a long way to go. I mean, he had surgery now in November. We're sitting here in February. So what do we have? 3 months later, and he's still not running. This is obviously more reason for concern when we talk about Victor Cruz. And also, you watch the actual game. You see the Denver Broncos win the Super Bowl, and you see them do it by, basically dominating up front with their front four, front seven. And it gives you a little reminder of how far the Giants have to go here and what they need to prioritize here this offseason. I think it's pretty clear. Got to get better up front. Got to improve that pass rush.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It reminded me, James, and I wonder if you saw this, kind of thought the same thing I did during the game. It reminded me that the Broncos pass rush last Sunday night in Super Bowl 50, the last time I can remember in a Super Bowl, a pass rush being that, disruptive in the game was the Giants against Tom Brady the first time they played him in Super Bowl 42. I mean, it was just, it was ridiculous watching how good that Broncos pass rush was, and it showed how far away the Giants pass rush is from that again.
Yeah, no, definitely. Obviously the Giants could not get to the quarterback this past season, and there were a lot of reasons why they were 6-10, but that was a major one. And I thought that if any Giant fan, anyone connected to the Giants in any way, shape, or form watching Super Bowl 50 had to say, well, we did that once upon a time, and we put 2 trophies in the case, and we don't do that anymore. And you watch that team do it; it was just so overwhelming, so dominant. I mean, I don't think those Giants defenses of the recent past really, I think this Broncos defense is probably better than those units, but definitely better than those units. But obviously the Broncos, it's a clear blueprint. If you can get out to the quarterback, you got a chance.
Von Miller, they don't have a Von Miller. Even on those Super Bowl teams, they didn't have any individual as good as Von Miller. I mean, Strahan, by that Super Bowl, was at the end of his career. He wasn't the same player that he was at that, 5 years before that. So, Von Miller in his prime, I think, is probably greater than any player on that. Either of those 2 Super Bowl winners for the Giants.
He might be, and that's saying something too, because obviously Strahan's a Hall of Famer, but Von Miller is an unbelievable player. I mean, there were those plays, and Jordan, you were there watching the game live. There was the one play, the replay keeps being shown, where we know what he did rushing the passer, but I think he was covering Jericho Cotchery 20 yards down the field in coverage. I mean, they don't make players with that kind of, the ability to do all those different things, the versatility he has. You don't see those guys come around very often.
Yeah, I mean, he's a freak athlete. He was the number 2 pick in the draft for a reason. Everybody knew this guy was a freak, and he's certainly developed into the player that everyone kind of expected coming out of Texas A&M. By the way, good friend with Demontre Moore. Too bad he can't couldn't have rubbed off on Demontre a little more. So, but Von Miller is a tremendous player, and James, brought it up. Let's basically wipe away any dream anyone has of getting Von Miller. He's not
happening.
Nobody's getting Von Miller. I mean, yeah, the Giants could get J.J. Watt too somehow. Come on.
Yeah, there's just no way that the Denver Broncos allow him to even see free agency for a day. So that was a nice dream for Giants fans, but it's kind of out the window now. But they will have a lot of money to spend. A lot of money to spend when March rolls around in free agency. So let's talk about what happened this week. We're doing this podcast on a Thursday. Just yesterday, you guys were reporting and writing about the cuts they made. John Beeson, who actually retired at the same time, which was a weird thing. And then Jeff Schwartz and Will Beatty, all gone from the Giants. So, Jordan, take us into what this means and how much money really will the Giants have available next month. We knew it was going to be a big number anyway, but now some more money was cleared out.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking in the $50 million plus range now. Victor Cruz, obviously, another one that's going to be settled at some point. it appears that is headed towards the direction of a renegotiation, especially since he wasn't part of that first round of cuts. At least, I mean, it all depends on his health. You got to see if his calf just doesn't want to cooperate or any other body part breaks down. Then why? For the Giants, you gotta just sever ties at that point. $9.9 million worth of salary cap. Hasn't played in almost 2 years. I mean, think about that. I was trying to think about it. You guys tell me. What do you think? Can you even think of guys that really have come back after 2 years, or at least almost 2 years out of the league and made a significant impact?
That's a very hard list, I think, to try to think. I mean, the only thing I could think of...
Carson Palmer, right.
But that's a quarterback.
But that was a little different, yeah, too. He also willingly retired for a little bit.
He just was so tired of the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah,
he said, I'll go home. Now, it's a good question. There haven't been many. I mean, Jordan, I remember when the injury first happened, and you started writing then. This was a while ago now, but you started writing then about how difficult of an injury this would be to come back from, and people shouldn't expect him to be the same player. Now, he has a new injury, and he re-injured himself, but your point then it still works now. I mean, he still hasn't come back from that original injury, which probably led to the second one.
Yeah, well, anyone who's thinking that he's coming back at the original form is just a dreamer at this point. That shouldn't even be in your mind that in any way, shape, or form. At this point, it's whether he can actually get back or not and be any sort of player, even a contributor. But to think, he'll ever come back at the same form he was, I think is a pipe dream at this point.
A major one, right. And the Giants have to deal with that. And before we move on, I have a tweet here, Jordan, that I wanted to mention on the podcast. So I guess you were tweeting with some readers and some fans about Victor Cruz. And so can you take us through what you'll shave into your head if Victor Cruz makes a whole boatload of money this year? No, we got to have this on the podcast.
Basically, Victor Cruz is, scheduled to make, $8 million or whatever the money is at this point, $9.9 million versus salary cap. And they're going to, if he comes back, they're going to redo his contract and give him significantly less because he's obviously not the player he was at that they wanted to pay $9.9 million. So somebody said, "What's the right price for him? $6 million?" So I would shave his number 80, in my head if he gets $6 million a year when he for this year. Because let's be honest, I mean, you haven't played in 2 years. If he goes on the open market, what's Victor Cruz worth?
Right now, a couple.
What would you pay him, Joe?
I'd pay him maybe $2 million with some incentives because you think maybe he could do something big if he gets healthy, but not a lot.
What do you got, James?
No more than like $3 million, and even that would be pushing. I mean, his base salary is set to be $7.9 million this season. I don't think the Giants are just going to cut $2 million off and be like, all right, let's go to work. Like,
I mean, like you said, here's the scenario. They put the guy in. They say, look, you either re-sign with us for X price, or you can go. We'll cut you, and you go to the open market.
Yeah.
And on the open market, I agree with James. Like $3 million, 1 year, $3 million tops. Like if I gave him if the team gives him 1 year, $3 million, I would say it's probably too much. But let's say on the open market he get 1 year, $3 million. So the Giants want to keep him, even if they overpay for him. I figure 1 year, $4 million, right? So 1 year, $4 million, I figure is the max. So this guy said $6 million, and I said, if that is true, then I would shave that in my head. So hopefully, and no incentives. It's not like he could get $2 million and then hit a $4 million incentive. That I'm not going to play that. Just basically realistic base salary plus. They're called likely to be earned incentives. So I'll include likely to be earned incentives. That means like being on the roster on March 5th, something like that. There's also in contracts it's called unlikely to be earned incentives, or not likely to be earned incentives. Those are things like all pro, yeah, or leading the league in receptions, stuff that like really he has to go be out of this world to get. So there we go. So what do you guys? Do you guys like my chances that I'm not going to have to shave my head?
I think you'll be all right with it. Though I do like that this is out there now. So this gives it just kind of adds intrigue to this whole process here with Victor Cruz.
My next one, if it has anything to do with Odell, is to do my hair. I'll do my hair like Odell, but it has to be something that I'm obviously going to win because I'm not about to do these things. My wife, my wife would not. My wife would not like me.
No,
she would.
She doesn't know about it, by the way. She does not know about this yet because I figure unless I have to do it, I'm not going to bring it up to her.
It's kind of like a need to know basis. She doesn't.
Yeah, I don't think she listens to this. So
but the thing about like 80 is though, like, all right, so let's say like somehow the Giants. I mean, and look, this is not going to happen, but like you could shave 80 into the side of your head and it would grow back. Probably within a day or two, I would think.
Plus,
especially we did during training camp.
Do you know how small it would be, James?
Yeah, very small.
You probably wouldn't even be able to see it.
It'll be like the 80 on the decal on the back of every helmet. Like,
I'll be able to like have a comb over on it.
Yep.
That's how small it's going to be if I have to go to that route.
So Victor Cruz survived the purge that cuts the Giants ban on Wednesday, which makes this whole thing with the 80 in your hair a talking point here. 3 guys that didn't, as we were saying: Jeff Schwartz, John Beeson, Will Beatty. James, what were your thoughts? And I know you were in the office yesterday. You were sitting across from me when these cuts started coming down. What were your thoughts on the moves the Giants made? Which one surprised you the most of the 3 yesterday? First of all, were you surprised that all these 3 got cut? And then, if so, which one surprised you?
Wasn't surprised that any of them got cut. I guess in the Beeson's case, cut/retired. I think all 3 of them were kind of, if you asked any guy, who are the Giants most likely to be, salary cap casualties? Jordan did a list the other day on NJ.com. Those guys were at the top of the list. The one I guess surprised me the most was I was a little bit surprised that they cut Schwartz. I thought that, Schwartz, yes, he has struggled mightily with injuries, but he was not making a tremendous amount of money, and he's a guy who, if he's 100% healthy, $4 million, could be a really good player, and he could play guard. He could also play tackle. He did a little bit of tackle this past preseason. So he was a guy I thought they might keep. I mean, with Beatty, I think the situation is makes a lot of money. Not a tremendous amount of money for the position, but Eric Flowers, it's pretty clear that he's their left tackle, and Will Beatty's a guy who can play left tackle. Probably could start for another team this coming season. He's going to be healthy, so I that one wasn't too surprising to me. And with Beeson, I mean, I think everybody knew that Beeson was going to be gone. It's just the injuries had piled up, and obviously he wanted to play again, but obviously the doctors told him it wasn't possible. So none of the 3 really surprised me, but I did think there was a good chance that Schwartz would stay.
Yeah, with Schwartz, I think it comes down to their confidence that he can hold up on that foot that he now broke twice, foot, ankle, whatever you want to call it, with 340 pounds. And I'm not sure that I think they reached a point where they didn't think that it was going to be able to hold up. So it'd be best to move on now and try to find a different solution.
So what does this mean for the offensive line? We talked about, when we did our last podcast, we were doing the needs the Giants have. And I think we were going over our specific offseason plans. Each of us kind of had in our head. And we all kind of went defense first. But now, does this change? You got your opinions on the offensive line and how much of it is. And they just cut 2 highly paid guys that at one point they looked at as, building blocks, or big pieces on this offensive line. Now with the injuries, they're not anymore. But I look
projected
at
starters last year. I mean, both of them.
Sure. Yeah. Right. So Flowers, Pugh, and Richburg, we know are entrenched here as 3 young guys they're going to put back there and try to win with. That leaves 2 spots. I mean, one might be filled by a guy or 2 on the roster. But Jordan, how does it change the Giants going into this offseason now looking for an offensive lineman some way, somehow?
Yeah, I think it changes it greatly because if you brought those 2 back, you're not penciling them in as starters, but you're certainly saying, okay, these 2 guys, we're going to at least allow to compete for starters and see if they can stay healthy. So, I mean, now those are 2 spots where they don't really have anybody, unless you're content with Marshall Newhouse or John Jerry. I don't think you're going to hand Bobby Hart, a 7th rounder last year, any sort of, okay, we're going to say this guy's going to go and compete with John Jerry to be our starting right guard. I don't think that's a good plan. You got to do a little better than that at this point. So, they got to address right guard and right tackle and bring in some guys. And I would assume at least one significant veteran free agent is now in the cards because they're going to need somebody on that right side that at least they know they can count on heading into the season. And I think in order to do that, I mean, John Jerry can start, but you're not blown away by John Jerry as your starter. Like if you have, Pugh. No, let's start from left. Right. You have Flowers, Pugh, Richburg, and then you sign, what's the guy's name? Smith, Andre Smith from
Cincinnati.
Is that his name, Smith? Why am I drawing a blank?
Andre Smith from Cincinnati. Yeah, the former, I think he's from Alabama. Yeah.
Yep. The right tackle. He became famous that he had that video of him running the 40 with his boobs bouncing.
Yes.
So, let's say you sign him, then you could say, all right, a right guard, and we'll go in with John Jerry and Bobby Hart and hope that one of them can kind of solidify that spot. And then you have, the four other guys around him, which you're pretty confident in those four other guys. You can feel pretty good about your line. So I think it makes a tackle or guard for the right side a necessity now in free agency.
Were you on the same page, James, that the Beatty and Schwartz releases open up the Giants to have to go out and bring in some veteran in free agency here?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, one established veteran free agent, and then, maybe you take a guy in the draft. I don't know if you take him, early or you take him late. So, if you have bring in one established free agent who's definitely going to start, maybe you get a guy in the draft, and then you have Hart and Jerry, you're pretty good. I mean, I know Dallas Reynolds is a free agent. Maybe the Giants will bring him back. But, I think at that point, as long as you get one established guy in free agency, you've got enough that you can go into camp trying to figure out, who that fifth guy is going to be. And you have a pretty strong line, I think the Giants would hope.
Yeah, they're going to need probably good to get somebody in the draft on top of it, like James said. Yeah. I think I agree with that. But the flip side is that's a tough investment to make in the first or second round. Another offensive lineman, that would be the fourth offensive lineman in the last 3 years in the first two rounds. That is a lot invested in your offensive line. At some point, you got to start, spreading the wealth.
Yeah, it would be a ton.
Can't put all your investments there.
Yeah, I mean they've spent a lot already, like you were saying there. I mean they've done a lot here to try to rebuild the offensive line, and they might pour some more money into it now. But like you said, the draft picks they've spent a lot on. So now we're a couple weeks away from the combine here, which means the offseason is now really going to get going here. And for the Giants, we've talked right here in this podcast and before about guys outside the organization that they could go after and plug in and fill the holes that way. But this week we're going to talk a little bit about some of the guys they have on the team or about to be free agents that maybe they will bring back, some they won't bring back, but kind of the priority levels for each one. So we have 6 soon-to-be Giants free agents. So we'll go around. We'll start with James, Jordan, and then I'll go for each of these guys. And we'll kind of say how important they are in each of our minds to bring back. So what we'll do is, James, and we'll start with you, scale of 1 to 10, your priority level and what you think the Giants should do in terms of bringing these guys back. 10 being you have to bring them back. 1 being let them walk out the door, all right?
You got it.
All right, let's start here on the defensive side of the ball. A guy that's a former guest of this show has had injury issues in his career, but I think he's a pretty good player. Corner Prince Amukamara. Where would you put the priority level, James, for Prince?
I would put the priority level at Prince at about 8, I would say. Jordan and I have talked about this a lot. I think the Giants should bring Prince back because if you don't bring Prince back, you either have to go get a cornerback pretty early in the draft or you have to go spend a lot of money to get a cornerback. And, the cornerback market is going to be what it is. I mean, Josh Norman's going to lead it, and then everybody, it's going to, settle the order from there.
He's not hitting the market.
No, you're right.
I mean, I'd be surprised if he hits the market.
Yeah. No, I didn't mean as much. He might not get the market, but obviously the Panthers are going to give him something, which is going to set the pecking order.
Yeah, but the likelihood is he's going to get franchised.
Yeah.
Or, tagged in some way, shape, or form. So it's going to be hard to, put a price on everyone else based off that. So I think that's going to be a little tough, but definitely a priority for me. 8. What'd you say, James?
I said 8.
You said 8 as well? So I'm going the same as James, 8. Can't let good defensive players go when you don't have that many good defensive players. And Prince Amukamara is a quality starting cornerback in the NFL. And those are not easy to find. So got to bring him back in my estimation.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I would go 8 too, and I would even say he's one of the ones that I would think the Giants should do everything they can over the next few weeks to keep him away from the market because, Jordan, if you're right, and I would tend to agree that Josh Norman won't actually see the light of day in free agency. I'm looking at the list here of free agent cornerbacks. I mean, there aren't many that you would put over Prince if we take Norman out of the mix. Janoris Jenkins is a pretty good player, and Young for the now Los Angeles Rams. There's a couple good ones, but not, I mean, it's Norman and then a big drop-off where you can probably make a case that if Norman doesn't hit and Amukamara does hit, he could get the biggest deal. As I look at this list here, there aren't many 26-year-old corners that are good players like him. I mean, Nolan Carroll's all right for the Eagles. Pac-Man Jones is still a good player, but older, and he's a mess too. There's not many. Sean Smith, a starter for the Chiefs, but he's not great. I mean, I would imagine Leon Hall is rated right here, at least what I see,
Sean Smith's
as the best
also.
one. He's over 30, though, so sure. So I'll go with an 8, and I'm with you guys. And I think the Giants really try to keep him away from that free agent market before someone says, oh, well, he's the number one guy, and he gets a big number. All right, player number 2. We'll stay on the defensive side of the ball. Robert Ayers, James, priority level. I know Jordan loves this guy, and we'll get his thoughts in a second. Priority level on Robert Ayers on the defensive line.
I will say Ayers is a 6.75. Obviously, he's a guy who I think if it gets really high and he's going to get offered a lot of money elsewhere, the Giants will probably back out. But look, he can play inside and outside. He had some injury issues, but he was tremendous on the field when he was healthy. He had a great second half of the season. He was the Giants' best pass rusher by far. He's just a guy who's an impact player, and he can play inside and outside. So I think he's a guy the Giants definitely should enter the offseason hoping to re-sign, and they just have to figure out how far they're willing to go, what they're willing to pay him.
James, how does 3 for 18 sound? Is that qualify as money getting up there or what?
I think 3 for 18 is fair.
Okay, I mean, I'm going to say 9 because I think he's their best pass rusher right now. And I think JPP, in my estimation, we'll get to him in a minute, I'm sure. Yeah. He's a risk. He's just a risk. So to me, I think he's less of a priority so because of that, I got to bring back my best pass rusher. The guy I know is going to be able to get after quarterback a little bit, and that's Robert Ayers. And you know what? He does it from the inside also. Sort of like their new, a lesser version of Justin Tuck, and obviously not as good against the run as Justin Tuck was. Ayers might be a more consistent pass rusher, and I know I've heard some people say, and I'm going to write something on this about how Ayers' success was directly tied to JPP's return. The reason that Ayers, all his sacks came when JPP returned is because he missed 4 games when JPP was gone. So he missed a lot of time, and then he came back and was still trying to get back from a hamstring injury. So that was basically 6 of the 8 games that JPP was out, and he actually played great in the opener in Dallas, even though he didn't get a sack. I believe he had something like 6 pressures or something.
He was very good that night. Yeah.
He was great in the preseason too.
Yeah, until he got injured in. Remember, he got injured in pregame warmups.
Against the Jets, yeah.
Yeah,
we never really got an explanation for that.
I think he rolled his sankle or something. He actually said he got hurt dancing. But anyway, that just the early part of his season was more injuries. So if there's a concern with Ayers, it's more injuries. Just the fact that he's had trouble at times staying healthy, little knocks and little nicks, little injuries here and there. But to me, I'm putting him at a 9. They need pass rushers. They need someone who could get after the quarterback. I think he's a good. Short. I was going to say short term, but it's not really short term. But he's also not a long term commitment. He's not a guy you're going to go sign for 5 years. He's 30, 31 years old, so you could get him for 2 years, 12 million, 3 years, 18 million, 3 years, 14 million, something like that. I think is realistic. So I'm a big fan of Robert Ayers this offseason. 9 for me.
That's a big number. Yeah, I'd probably go 7.5, something around there. I mean, unless if he gets the kind of deal and the kind of deals you're referring to there, Jordan, I think it's a great deal for the Giants. And to me, why it's so high, not just because he's a good player, but like we said in the last episode, they need 3 or 4 pass rushers. They need a wave of them, and he would get the ball rolling. At least you have one guy locked up, and then you do whatever you do in the draft or somewhere else in free agency, and it helps to have a foundation of at least one guy saying, all right, this guy's pretty good at getting to the quarterback, and now we put some other guys around him. All right, let's jump to the bigger name.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to this one. No, you know what? My question had to do with this one, so let's get into this one.
Let's get to the bigger name. His line mate there, and one Jordan had just mentioned that some people were referring to Ayers compared to when JPP was there when he wasn't. So we start with you again, James. JPP coming off a year where obviously it'll be talked about for a long time. We still don't know what kind of player he will be the rest of his career now, having some more surgery on that hand. Priority level to bring Jason Pierre-Paul back for the 2016 Giants.
I will put it at a 5. If I were the Giants, I would tell JPP, we will give you a 1-year deal worth, if we're going to give Ayers 6, all right, 1 year, $7 million, come back, prove that you are an impact, Pro Bowl caliber player. And if you are, then you'll get everything you're due. You'll probably make more money in free agency next year than you would this year. That's what I would tell Jason Pierre-Paul. And if someone else makes a big offer to him, then you just, say, best of luck, Jason. It's been great. And just, see what he can do.
If you're him, though, don't you have to take whatever you can right now? This might be your last chance ever to get paid. Shouldn't you just take as much money as humanly possible guaranteed after what just happened?
Totally. But I'm just saying, if I'm the Giants, I just say, look, we supported you. We brought you back. We did pretty well by you with last year's, prorated contract. This is what we're putting on the table. Prove it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think the Giants are going to lay out a huge long-term deal. What if you had Ayers? This was my question.
Okay.
Ayers and JPP, 3 years, $18 million, both guys. Where are you going?
That's a great question because
you only get to keep one.
I'm keeping Ayers.
Wow. I mean, I think I might go JPP in that one just because I think there's more upside there, and that's not a contract that cripples you. But I mean,
I know, but my thing is, don't you need somebody that you could definitely count on? Like
you don't know
JPP. Like, let's say they bring JPP back and he ends up being damaged goods, then they're what? They have nothing.
No, they don't. They have a guy that's
they're not in position to take that kind of risk, I feel.
Yeah, it could be a major mess because, if for some reason he can't, even if he sheds the club, like, you don't really know. And the Giants are at a point where they really, they've missed the play. Like, you can't have things start stacking up on you. Mistakes. Oh, this happened. They can't take that chance.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of my feeling. Like, let's say the Miami Dolphins, Cameron Wake comes back. They could take the chance on the other side with Jason Pierre-Paul for 3 years, $18 million, with $10 million guaranteed or whatever, and say, okay, let's give it a try. We have the potential. The upside is amazing. But if it doesn't work out, okay, we still have Cameron Wake on the other side, The Giants,
ironically,
what happens if it doesn't happen? Yeah, that's a little trade.
It'd be nice if the Giants had a healthy, young JPP on the other side, and they could take a chance on this JPP on the other side.
Yeah. Unfortunately, life doesn't work like that. You can't reincarnate JPP with 5 fingers again.
You can't do it.
So wait, okay, I'm gonna go. Let me put my number. I go 5 with James. I mean, not a priority for me. I would love to bring him back at the right price, but at the same time, it's a risky move, and I can't commit anything huge to it.
Yeah, I would go 4 just because I think maybe it's better if this marriage ends and JPP goes in a different direction. If the price is right and he comes back on, a deal that they can't turn down because, the upside is there, then of course you bring him back and you make him part of this rotation and maybe he finds it again and maybe he could figure out a way to play like this. But I wouldn't make it much of a priority. All right, let's...
1 year, 6 or 7, as James said. You do it, Joe?
I do that, yep.
I'd probably do it too.
Yeah, I think the upside there is just too good not to. If he could find himself. So we'll stay on the defensive side of the ball. 1 year deal is a 1 year deal. We'll stay on the defensive side of the ball for one more player, then we'll jump to offense and special teams. Let's go with Cullen Jenkins, a guy that, he's been part of this defensive line rotation for a couple of years. He's versatile. He's been on winning teams in the past before. He's a veteran. Where do you include him, James, when you had a priority level for Cullen Jenkins? I don't imagine he's going to have a major market money-wise, but I could see a lot of teams being interested in him.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this when Beeson retired, and this sort of was a talking point this past season about like where were the Giants' defensive leaders at, and obviously with John John Beeson was the captain, he was the guy, but now that he's retired, the Giant and Prince and JPP weren't necessarily the traditional leader, but you might think about, but they might be gone too. So I would put Jenkins at like a 6 or a 7, I think, because you do have to worry about, you're going to have such a major overhaul of this defense that, that he's a guy who has a lot of respect in the locker room, and he's a veteran who knows what it takes to be successful in this league. So I think he's definitely a valuable guy to bring back, especially now that Beeson's gone and the other guys might be on the way out as well.
James, you stole my thunder. I mean, I was going with 7 too, and that was exactly my reason, because he's the leader of that defense. He was basically the captain this year, and you want to have some stability there, and he's your only chance. Now, I don't want to bring him back as my starting defensive tackle alongside Jonathan Hankins. I want to bring him back as like my 3rd or 4th rotational defensive tackle. Come in occasionally, give you some pass rush, get some penetration, maybe only play 20 snaps a game. But at the same time, I want him to be one of those guys that can have a strong voice in the locker room, and that's a big reason why I would like him back, and I would put it at a 7. And he's going to come cheap. I mean, he took a pay cut last year, no problem. He basically would probably play for close to the veteran minimum, not much more. I mean, he's up there in age. I don't know on the top of my head. I have to look it up real quick, but I think he's like 35, 36 years old. So, he would almost come for the veteran minimum at this point, but I think that leadership is worth it. Yeah, he actually just turned 35 at the end of last month. So, yeah, bring him back 1 year, $2 million. I would take that. Something, a little more than minimum, double minimum. So
I would too. I would go to 6 or 7 on this one. Same type of thing. Same reason as you guys. And it's funny, you mentioned his age, Jordan. My guess would have been he's a little older, because I remember when he went to the Eagles in that Dream Team year, I think it was 2011, which is now 5 years ago. They were talking about him then as a veteran leader. I mean, he was a better player then, obviously, because he was younger and he was closer to his prime. But it feels like he's always kind of had that word attached to him, which is a good thing. People consider him a leader. He was one, or at least considered one, when he went to the Eagles. That was a while ago now.
Yeah, you know what the knock on him there was? Is that, and this was proofs that, statistically or analytically, and, by people inside the NFL, is that he's a guy who breaks down later in the season. Always has been a guy who's like, his play in the second half of the season was significantly inferior to his play earlier in the year, which is kind of interesting. And that was even when he was like middle age, like when he went to that Philly in the younger age. So, him as a little quick jump start, 10, 15, 20 snap guy, I like that.
I do too. Let's jump to the offensive side of the ball. I mean, this is the guy we're going to talk about here. I just feel like it's given Giants fans so much angst for a long time, and now I think it's fitting in an offseason of change here. He is a free agent. That would be Ruben Randle. Still only 24 years old, has never become the player I think the Giants maybe wanted him to be. But I think what complicates this is we know about Odell Beckham as a true number 1 wide receiver, one of the best in the game. But what's next to him, especially with the conversation we had a little while ago about Victor Cruz? So, I mean, they probably need another receiver here to go alongside Beckham. Is that guy still Randall? James, where do you put Ruben Randle on the priority list?
Oh, wow. 2, I guess.
So, no, he's not a priority.
No, I mean, see, like the crazy thing about Ruben Randle is, if you look at the wide receiver, the free agency class that's coming up, assuming Alshon Jeffrey never hits the market, which I think we all probably would agree the Bears are going to do everything they can to get him wrapped up.
Yep, but I'm looking at the list right now as you talk.
Okay. It's like Rashard Matthews, Marvin Jones, and Mohamed Sanu from the Bengals, Anquan Bolden. I mean, Randall is one of the bigger names that's going to be out there. And youngest. And if you think about it, it's like, he's coming off he had a very, I would say, poor contract year, given everything. I mean, imagine if he had a year comparable to 2014. There would be no chance he'd be back with the Giants. So, I mean, he's one of those guys who I think the Giants, they're not going to pay him a lot of money. Someone else is going to pay him a lot of money. If for some reason he's sitting there and they can get him on the cheap, then yeah, bring him back. But beyond that, it's just he's a guy who I think needs to change his scenery, and he's going to get that.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a 3. Just not a priority for them. Work ethic has come into question, which just doesn't stem well. You need the right guys around Odell Beckham right now, and I don't think that's what you want, especially after what we've seen so far. This is a guy who was already benched twice by the team. Never really, stepped up his game. He had multiple opportunities. I mean, the number of targets he had, not this past year, but in 2014. I mean, he got the ball as if he was a star receiver, and his production was, blah. What do you have, like almost 900 yards or right around 900 yards? But nothing special. And it just, I just don't see, personally, when I watch him play, I don't see any explosion out of Ruben Randle. Nothing that tells me that that he's going to get better as we go along here. If anything, I think he's the kind of guy that, Akeem Nicks style is just going to wilt away. Once he loses a little bit more speed, then he just won't even be able to get open anymore. And, go ahead.
His knees, we had that whole thing in Cincinnati where his knees got aggravated because of the different grass. I still don't understand what that was about. But anyway, but it was like, it went from like, oh, this is just nothing. He's just taking
James, that's called a lie, James. That's what
it's called. It became like this major ordeal, like for like half of training camp with his knees.
Yeah, he couldn't move. He never showed any explosion at any point this year.
He's just a guy who, look, I'm sure someone's going to pay him money because, that's numbers. What happens. His numbers, But the Giants, the Giants need to go out and get a established, viable, young number 2 receiver, draft or free agency. Although I don't think it would be too crazy if they. I don't know if Anquan Boldin wants to move out to the East Coast, but
I was just thinking the same thing, James. He can make some sense.
You bring him in and put him with Odell. Obviously, that would be a good influence. But
the leader that we were talking about before. He'd be the perfect guy.
But it's just I think the Giants' plan of receiver should be get a number 2 for Odell, hope that Victor Cruz comes back and is something good, and then go from there. Obviously, Dwayne Harris would be your 4th or your 5th guy. But Ruben Randle, he's not going to be back, and I don't think the Giants are going to be really worried about the fact they're going to lose him.
My only problem with a guy like Bolden is there's got to be a point where at some point he's going to not be able to play, right? He's going to be 36 this year. You got to be getting to that point pretty soon. You're talking about a guy who ran a 4.71 40. I'm looking at it right now. When he, and that was when he first came into the league 15 years ago. So he ran a 4.71 15 years ago. What do you think he's running now?
He's like he was a wily old veteran the day he walked in the league. Like that guy, I don't know how he
got his face broken when he played the Jets.
That's crazy.
Right. He just always finds a way to get open. Still last year on a bad Niners team, and obviously without much speed, like you were saying there, Jordan, he still had almost 70 catches. He's still kind of productive, even though he can't move much.
Yeah, but look at his numbers. His numbers are pretty close to what Ruben Randle did. I know we like the fact of the intangibles he brings, but does he really provide that much of an upgrade as a wide receiver at this point of his career? It's debatable.
Probably not. Yeah, I would go with a 4 on Randle just because I don't know what they're going to put next. What else, the other options they have, but I don't think they're going to bring him back. And just before we move on, James, you were right, your original point, that he blew a chance here. Just looking at that list of receivers, if we assume Jeffrey doesn't hit the market, if Ruben Randle had a big year, he'd be the number one guy.
Yeah. It's just like that when you factor in everything that happened this year and all the times where people thought he quit on plays and everything. The fact that he was in a contract year and he could have been the number 1 receiver or the top 3 receiver on the market. It's kind of head scratching.
It definitely is, and we'll see where he ends up and what the rest of his career has in store. Now we move to our last one on our list here. We go to the special teams, the guy that was, for the most part, almost perfect, very good for the Giants in 2015. That'd be Josh Brown, the veteran kicker. He's a guy that a couple of years ago, Giants had to make a decision, him or Brandon McManus. I guess so far it's hard to say they did the wrong decision, though McManus is young and looks like he's going to be a great kicker for a while. But Brown's been good for them, and now he's a free agent. James, where would you go on the priority list there?
I'm going to put Josh Brown at an 8. Steady. He's a well-respected veteran, a guy who I think a lot of players look up to in the locker room. I believe he wants to come back and keep kicking. And the one missed field goal against the Jets in that game aside in overtime, he was sensational for them. He's a good locker room guy. He's a veteran, so and he can still produce. It looks like, so I would put him as an 8.
Yeah, I'll go 7. I mean, Josh Brown can't complain. Everything he's done the last couple of years. Real good on field goals with 90+%. I think it was 93 or 94% this year, tied for the league lead. So, you make field goals, you want that guy back. At the same time, if for some reason it didn't happen, not the end of the world. Josh Brown does not have 5 years left in this league. He's already up there in age. His kickoffs aren't the greatest. So, he doesn't boom touchbacks at the rate that they would probably like in day and age when touchbacks are regular for some guys. But still, Josh Brown, good field goal kicker, makes his kicks 94% this year on kicks. So give me a 7 on him.
Yeah, I'll go 7 too. Anyone that's perfect for 3/4 of the season, in the league where all these games are separated by 5-6 points every week, he's certainly valuable there. So
if he was 3 or 4 years younger, I'd probably put it at like 9.
Right? Yeah, definitely. Just because you think you have a franchise kicker for a long time. So we went through our list here of the Giants that we would bring back and how much priority we would give to them. So what's up next, guys? We had the cuts yesterday. We're doing this podcast on Thursday. With the cuts yesterday, we have free agency coming here. So what are the dates that Giants fans should keep in mind over the next couple weeks? I know you guys are both heading to the Combine, or just you, James?
We will both be in Indianapolis.
All right, so that's next. That's coming up on the 23rd. Does that start?
Yeah, somewhere around there, 23rd, 24th.
Right, so that's next. And then the dates you need to know.
March 6th and 9th?
24th to 27th, I think, are the days where there's interviews and players and the media can bop around. Those are the key days where everybody's kind of in Indianapolis.
Yeah, we're traveling the 23rd. That's what it is. And I believe it's March 6th to March 9th. It's March 6th is the start of the talk window for free agents. March 9th, sign away officially. I mean, we'll hear some of the stuff beforehand, but so that's free agency is next. So, we're going to start hearing about the draft with the Combine. Free agency is really upon us. I go on vacation next week. So Saturday to Saturday, I'll be gone. Have a couple things pre-planned, but aside from that, James will carry you through the week. We're going to start really attacking free agency. We'll start by breaking down the Giants' own free agents. We'll get some thoughts on what the market's going to be for each guy. And then once that Combine comes around, the Combine is where the teams and the agents start really talking. You start getting an idea, blueprint for stuff that's going to happen. So stay tuned. We'll keep you abreast with what's going on around that time.
Should be fun. We'll be reading. Jordan, enjoy your vacation. James will keep us, like you said, up to date. And we'll talk soon, maybe right around the time you guys are getting back from the Combine to kind of recap the whole thing.
Sounds good.
All right.
Good,
thanks.
Joe.
Thanks, Jordan.
Anytime, Joe. How about we do a pre-Combine one first?
We'll do a pre-Combine one before you guys fly out, and then the next week we'll kind of recap everything, get everyone ready for free agency. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Deal.
All right. Thanks, James.
No problem, Joe. Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for listening to episode 42 of Talk is Cheap, our New York Giants podcast. Remember to subscribe on iTunes, on Stitcher, find us on SoundCloud, and be here every week as we talk Giants football on NJ.com.